Hi, Cepee. How are you today? Tell us where you're calling from.
Shauna,
I don't know if you're in Malaga or you're in, where are you
where
right
am I? Hello, everyone. Hey, Shauna, so excited to be here. I'm actually, yes, in Malaga, Spain. Just got back from Thessaloniki, Greece, but made it back home 2 days ago.
now? Oh, I'm so excited to have you again. For those of you that don't know Cepee, you need to know Cepee because she's kind of the epitome of somebody that you can come from. First of all, she's from the US, like me. You actually come from Texas. And at the age of 35, Cepee upended her entire life by selling all of her things, her belongings, and stopping her career. And since then has never looked back. And she moved to Europe. So she's all about making your move abroad at any age. So for those of you that really are kind of having a struggle about, oh, well, I'm not young, or some of these, limiting beliefs are coming up about age, it's totally possible for you. And that's what she takes a stand for. And I would love to hear more about, if you can kind of tell everybody about She Hit Refresh. She Hit Refresh, guys, first to intro it. It's a global community of over 10,000 women who are aged 30 and up. So she's helped thousands of people make the move abroad. And then later, just stay tuned. We are going to be giving away a couple free gifts. She's also been featured on Forbes, which is really, really cool. Also multicultural. You're multicultural. You're Colombian and Iranian descent, right?
You got it. Yes.
Love it. So tell me a little bit more about you, about also She Hit Refresh, because I think it's such an awesome thing that you're doing with helping so many people.
Thank you so much. So thanks for putting this summit on for everyone. I want to see in the chat, let me know for the ladies out there and the men too, but my community is for women over 30. So let me know in the chat if you're over 30, if you're comfortable, put the number in there. I'm very transparent with my age. I am 43 and I moved to Spain when I was 35. So yes, I'm seeing a lot of over 30s, cusp of 30, amazing. My people are here. So She Hit Refresh, as Shauna said, is a community for women over 30 who want to move abroad. We started off as a Facebook community. That's where the hub is. We have over 10,000 women in there that either want to move abroad or have made that move. And so that's what I do. I teach women how to make it happen. And I like to say now, how to make it happen sooner rather than never. Because I found, like myself, there's so many women out there who didn't wake up this morning with a dream to move abroad. This is something you've been thinking about since maybe, you did your first trip to Europe in your 20s, or maybe, even earlier than that. You've been dreaming about this, but haven't made it happen for one reason or another. And it just feels like it's a little harder the older we get. But I like to remind women that it's not. It's never too late. You're not too old to hit refresh.
I love it. Oh, that's so cool. And I love the name. It really is, you do hit refresh. And to kind of touch on, Cepee's calling from Malaga, which is super interesting. That's kind of how we originally connected, is because I also made the move, left a corporate career and went to Spain as well from the US. So I think there's just so many similarities. And if you guys feel like you're alone, you're really not. We've done it. We're here for you. Feel free to reach out. I'm going to drop Cepee's email and her website as well as her Instagram. So if you guys have any other additional questions, or you want to schedule a call, just feel free to reach out, guys, because that's what's so great about this community. And for the guys out there, don't leave. This information will still be helpful for you. But just wanted to
the information is relevant for you.
Yes. And this is the interesting thing too, Cepee. I mean, I know we talk about can you tell us, do you deal with all of EU? Do you deal with any country? Kind of what's your specialty, or what's your favorite countries to deal with?
Yes, my specialty. So I actually think Shauna might be sharing the link later, but I wrote a book on, so my specialty is Europe, and I focus on the countries that have viable visa options for you to move to. So, I met people who are like, oh my God, I want to move to Iceland. I want to move to Sweden. And I'm like, okay, those are really difficult countries to go to. And so I actually, during COVID, did the homework for you, and wrote a book that narrowed down the 18 easiest countries to move to in Europe. Because as Damien mentioned, if you want to move abroad, you need to be legal to live there. And that means you're going to have to figure out a visa that works for you. And there's tons of them out there. And I wrote the book because I wanted to highlight all these visas that I had learned about after I moved abroad. I myself had been trying to move to Spain since I was 21 and finally did it at 35, a lot of trial and error. And there were so many visas I wasn't aware of that would have made the path a lot easier. And now post-pandemic, there's so many new visas and opportunities for people to move abroad. So I focus on those 18 countries that, are going to be easier for you to move to. And really my specialty is Spain, because I've had a on and off relationship with this country for over 20 years. And I've been living here the last 8 years. So this is the country that I know best.
Amazing. Oh, and when you said the top 18, I mean, I don't want you to list all of them, but could you tell us, like, just with the people you work with and the people in the community and your clients, what are the top ones people are choosing and why?
Yes. So Spain and Portugal, the Iberian Peninsula, which I'm sure you're going to hear a lot about during the summit. People are moving here because if you're coming from the US or North America, the cost of living is generally a lot less, although things are changing. But warm weather and also the ease of visas. There's visas that have made it a lot easier for you to move to these two countries. But there's also great countries like Germany. There's a great freelancer visa for people there. And if you're highly skilled, it's maybe possible to get hired there, although trying to get a work visa in Europe is very difficult for Americans, not impossible. And I think another location to look at are all the countries that are popping up with these digital nomad visas. So Greece has one, Estonia, of course, Spain and Portugal, but there's a lot more out there, Malta. So there's a lot of options out there, but Spain and Portugal are always at the top of the list.
Amazing. And what are the ones that, people are going, what visas are the ones that people are going for and that you're recommending in these countries?
Yeah, so I think these visas that are called non-lucrative visas, so / retirement visas, but as Damien mentioned, you don't always have to be retired to qualify for those. I actually have lived in Spain on various visas, and I was on this retirement visa when I was 37, and I definitely was not retired. But these visas really, they're different. They're a little different from country to country, but a lot of them you can qualify for if you have enough savings to show that you can financially support yourself while living in a country on these visas. And some of these visas allow you to work remotely while you're there. So those are some of the most popular, but I would say now these digital nomad visas are really changing the game. Those are going to be the ones that are going to be easiest to qualify if you have a remote job that you can take with you abroad. So the barriers of entry are a lot lower, and those are probably the most popular because you don't have to rely on getting a work sponsorship visa in a country to move there, which I said earlier is pretty difficult to do.
Yeah. Oh, so interesting. So the remote work visa in all these countries, I mean, there's one in Spain, there's one in Portugal, Estonia has one, Croatia, there's so many countries. But there's a catch. You don't just go for, oh, I love the Croatia one. Because, for example, like Croatia, I don't think you can stay there after, it's not like a path to residency. Can you talk about this phrase, path to residency, so people are aware of this? This is like so important.
Yes, let's talk about that. And I saw a question there. Someone asked me about my path to residency, and I like to be really transparent because I think some people assume that, I married a Spaniard, like a Spaniard sponsored me. I did this all on my own. So I also say that to give people hope. Like a lot of people think you have to, have an in with finding your partner to get in. So I was here on a student visa. Student visas often don't count towards a path to residency. And a path to residency just means that you have to, have a visa that allows you to live in a country for a certain amount of time and that you can renew. And so like Shauna mentioned, these digital nomad visas, often can't be renewed for more than 1 or 2 years. So they don't lead to a path of residency, right? So after a certain amount of time, once that visa's expired, then you gotta go. You gotta find somewhere else to go. But the non-lucrative and other visas out there, work visas, they can lead to residency. So in my case, I was on a student visa. I've also been on a work visa. So I got really lucky and got sponsored by a Spanish company in Spain. And also I was on the non-lucrative visa. And so those allowed me to stay in Spain and renew. And then there was like a secret path that, or not a secret path, but a path I think not a lot of people know about. Now I'm a citizen of Spain. And I got that through, let me also see in the chat, for anyone who has citizenship from a Latin American country, let me know in the chat. Or if one of your parents or grandparents is from a Latin American country, let me know in the chat. There may be a path to citizenship in Spain, if that's the case.
Wow, I love that. There's so many creative, this is a creative process. I think people sometimes think, oh, if this, then that. I mean, like it's very linear or something, but there's a lot of different ways that we can take your case, like what Cepee does when she works with you. She takes your case and she's like, okay, she asks you a question. Okay, maybe we can do this. And it's really to like narrow it down, because somebody did ask in the chat, which I really appreciate you asking this question. You know, what do you recommend for me in my early 20s? What would be the next step through that process? Because it is a creative process. How do you navigate?
Yeah, so I think, yeah, this is a great question. I think one, it depends on what your goals are. So for some people, yeah, maybe you just want to live in Europe for a year or two. It's maybe not a long-term thing right now, or so maybe you just want to take a sabbatical. You're not looking for a path to citizenship or long-term residency. In that case, maybe the digital nomad visa is the path for you to go. But for someone who's looking to, establish roots, establish a life, and be somewhere long-term, then that's gonna, help you decide which countries you should look at. Also, it depends on your situation. Financially, can you even meet the threshold of a non-lucrative type visa? For the digital nomad visa, do you have a remote job that you can take with you? Is your employer willing to allow you to work from a different country? So you have to think about all of those things to see what's going to be the best fit for you. And I think that's the first step, to really identify what is your needs and what is your goals when we're talking about moving abroad, because that's different for everybody. Everyone's going to have different needs. And there's so many different visas out there. I know people, I did a master's at 30 years old in Spain. So maybe that's a route for you. Going back to school, either to do another bachelor's, to do a master's, even a PhD, can be an in to a country. So if you've been thinking about studying again, getting a degree, I mean, it's so much cheaper abroad. And that's an in to be in the country, not only study, but build a network that might help you get a job after you graduate.
I totally agree. I couldn't agree more. And for those of you who might be thinking, oh my gosh, I can't study, been there, done that, or you're thinking it's super expensive. It's really not. In Spain. And Cepee, it's funny because I actually studied in Spain too. And that was one of my visa routes that I was doing for Spain back when it wasn't as easy as it was now, which but it was 4,000 euro for the entire year for my master's degree. So think about, what you would be paying in the US or a North American country versus, oh my gosh. I mean, we can't go wrong with that. I mean, it's crazy. And a lot of countries offer that. It's not just Spain. Would you agree that they have?
Yeah. A lot of countries have, tuition. You would be shocked. I think I saw some emojis here and people saying, what? So much less expensive in Europe. And so if you're thinking of studying there, definitely look and see what schools are there, what you want to do. And that could be an in for you. I see a question here. Someone says, Cepee, when will the podcast resume? Yeah, so I do have a podcast where I interview women who have made the move, so you can hear their journey, how they did it. Not only the pros and the positives of moving abroad, but also all those doubts that are coming up for you, whether it's I'm too old, what about my career? What are people going to think? What if it doesn't work out? So we talk about all of that. The podcast has been on hold because I've been working on so many other projects, but I'm hoping to bring it back next year. So cross fingers.
I know Cepee's literally traveling all the time, not only to support her clients and get amazing travel content, which I love your Instagram, by the way, but also attending like conferences. She speaks at a lot of digital nomad and working remote conferences. So she's definitely somebody you're going to want to add to your network. And we have some questions, which I want to make sure we get to all these.
Sure.
Kimoy Matthews asks, with the digital nomad visa, if you have a remote job, you're still expected to pay taxes and maintain your residency in the US, right?
Well, in the US, so this is a good question. So if you're a US citizen, unfortunately, we are always on the hook for our taxes, no matter where we live in the world. So I live in Spain. I don't spend a lot of time in the US. Spain is my main country of residence, but I still have to file US taxes every year. Now, filing doesn't always equal paying, but this is going to be, case by case scenario. I can't tell you, what country you're going to and what your taxes are going to be. Typically in Europe, if you're living in a country for over 183 days out of the year, then you are generally considered a tax resident in that country. Depending on the country, your taxes may be high, they may be low, depending on your earnings or assets. So you do have to typically file into, in the US and the country you're residing in abroad. But depending if the US has a tax agreement with that country, then you shouldn't be paying taxes twice. You'll pay in one country and sort of get a credit for the other country. But you need to talk to an expat tax attorney for your specific situation to understand what your tax burden will be.
Wow, love that. That's such a good tip. Seema asks, and this is a really good one, would a student visa mean you need to be in a degree program?
Oh, I love that question, Seema. So no, not necessarily. So definitely it can apply to, like I said, bachelor's, master's, PhD, but a lot of countries, most of them offer student visas to people who want to study a language. So you can go to a language academy. It doesn't have to be a university. And you can do that. I mean, you can do that without a visa for up to 3 months in most countries. But if you want to stay longer, you could do that, study on a student visa.
I love that. And I think, I don't know if you know this, Cepee, but the Cervantes School, which I know they're in Barcelona and Madrid, that's an example of one of the language schools, and it's a 9-month or a year program, and that would give you the visa. So I love that you brought that up about the language schools. It's like, what better way than to enjoy your time? It's not like a hardcore bachelor's program where you're having to, write essays and huge reports. It's not what you're thinking. You don't have to go into these 4-year programs.
No, and it's a really fun experience, but do know that moving to a country on a student visa for a language program may not lead to, a pathway to residency. It'll give you you can stay in the country for as long as you're studying, but it may end when that's done. So you do have to think about, again, what is your ultimate goal?
And knowing if that leads to citizenship or residency. Tell us about then the citizenship part. Going from residency to citizenship, because if you have a student visa, isn't that residency?
So it's residency, depends on the country. So in Spain, for instance, my pathway to citizenship, my student visa did not count towards that whatsoever. It was just like those years being in Spain on a student visa counted as nothing. So you really have to look into that and see on the country you're going to if that's going to qualify or not. For people, so typically in Europe, you have to reside in a country legally for 10 years before you can apply for citizenship. And sometimes, for instance, in Spain, again, let me remind you, like my pathway to citizenship was I applied as a Colombian citizen. It's like a fast track for people from Latin America. That's why I asked earlier, is anybody from Latin America? But typically you have to wait 10 years. And on that pathway, your student years may count, but they're only going to count as half years. So it can be a little confusing. So you need to check with the country you're moving to. What are the rules there when it comes to student visas?
Interesting. Thank you so much. And then your guys' questions are so great. Somebody's also asking, does Spain allow for dual citizenship? When you're at that point when you can get your citizenship in Spain or Portugal or one of these countries, do you have to renounce your American or your Canadian citizenship?
Okay, yeah, so I love this question, and Spain does not allow dual citizenship. So I'm going to let you know, exactly how it works, because I get this question a lot. So actually, let me take that back. Spain does allow dual citizenship with certain countries. The US is not one of them, and I believe Canada isn't either. So if you want to become a Spanish citizen, you do have to renounce your American citizenship. That doesn't mean you're going through a formal process. There's a formal process to renounce your US citizenship. You have to go to a consulate. You have to pay money. You have to have like an interview so you understand what you're doing. You have to sign off on it. It's a whole formal thing. Spain doesn't require you to do that. They just require you to take an oath stating that you're renouncing your citizenship. The US does not recognize that. So I'm not a lawyer. And so I definitely talk to a lawyer if this is something you want to do. I tell people, this is up to you, how comfortable you feel with that decision. Historically, we haven't seen people, the US revoking anyone's citizenship because they became a Spanish citizenship. Doesn't mean it may not happen in the future, but for me, I was willing to take that risk. And I'm happy with my decision, but you really have to make the right decision for you if that's the pathway you want to go. But different countries are different. If you're in Portugal and want to become a citizen, and Portugal has a pretty fast track to citizenship compared to other countries in Europe. That might be a way to go if you're looking for that long-term path to living in Europe.
Wow. So typical process of like residence, like the visa option they choose, such as the non-lucrative to actual residency to citizenship, the range you say is about 10 years, you think?
Well, in order, I mean, you'll become a resident. So if you come on a non-lucrative visa, you come to Spain on your visa, you apply for residency and you'll be issued 1 year of residency and you can renew that visa. So you can continue to renew that for another 2 years, for another 2 years. Then you can apply for permanent residency, which gives you, another 5 years till you need to renew that. And then at 10 years, then you can apply for citizenship. So citizenship is a long game. Again, it's about, what is your ultimate goal? Is that you can live actually pretty comfortably and happily in Europe and Spain just as a resident, a permanent resident. You don't really have to go the citizenship route unless if that's something, you're really interested in doing.
Right. Oh, wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. And if you guys have more questions, please drop them in the chat. We still have 5 more minutes until lovely Anita comes on. She is actually a language expert. So I see a lot of questions in here about languages. She's actually a Portuguese teacher. She's actually pretty famous on Instagram and different platforms. So you're definitely going to want to wait for that interview. But let's talk about language. I'm seeing a couple of questions here, Cepee, about language requirements with visas, and also what's your take on like the language in the country?
Yeah, so yeah, for Spain, for the visas, there's no language requirement. To become a Spanish citizen, there is a language requirement, as there is probably in every country that you're going to apply for citizenship. Generally, that level is very low, so I wouldn't be freaking out about that. It can be pretty basic, or it can be a little more conversational. But if you're living in a country, you have time to ramp up. So my take on languages has changed over the years because as I've aged and met people of different ages and moving for different reasons. I think before I used to be very staunch, like you have to be fluent, you have to learn the language if you're going to move somewhere. And now I really get it that, languages don't come easy for everybody. Not everyone's going to be able to integrate as easily. So I think definitely, learning the basics anywhere is just going to enhance and enrich your experience living abroad. Language is so tied to culture and there's so much that is lost when you don't learn the language. But I totally get it. If you're living in a country and, it's just really hard for you and it's not a priority for you. I get that too. I understand someone moving abroad much later in life, maybe they just want to enjoy their life. They're not trying to become, fluent in Spanish at 75, and that's totally okay.
Right. But the basics are very important. And
the basics are important.
If you really don't make an effort, it's going to be hard for you. It's really important to know your basics, and which I want to talk about language a little bit, and some questions people were asking about, oh, but if you do a student visa, you only can work for 20 hours. And then I responded, but there's creative things you can do, which is why I think, working with somebody like you, Cepee, is so valuable. You and I both did the same thing. We were English teachers. We had our temple and we gave English classes. We did private. You did private as well, right?
Yeah.
Private classes. Can you talk about that, about doing private English classes in a country to make extra money? Also, retirees, this can be for you too. This is a lot of things. People want extra spending money when they move to different countries. So can you talk about that whole teaching English side of things?
Yes, I want to talk about that. And then I just want to go back to languages after that real quick, but teaching English. So that was actually my in to Spain when I came at 35 in 2015. I didn't want to teach English. I had done it at 26 and it felt like kind of like going back, and I wanted to move forward. But for me, it was an easy visa to get to Spain. There's a teaching assistant program I came on, but that program only paid about €1,000 a month. Granted, I was only working 16 hours a week for that €1,000. But I needed to supplement my income. And so I did take on private classes, which, in a lot of countries, people want to learn English. So it's pretty easy to find those and supplement my income that way. And so I think it's a quick way to make some quick cash abroad. I don't recommend it as a long-term option to living abroad, unless if you have a savings as a buffer to supplement. because, you know, there's really a ceiling on how much you can earn teaching. And so I don't think it's the right fit for everybody, especially when I'm talking to my women over 30 who want to, you know, maybe be planning for retirement, savings, want to go eat at nice restaurants, travel, do all these things. I think it can be limited if you're just teaching, but I think teaching is a great way to experience another country, to get your foot in the door like I did somewhere, and really just kind of almost in a way have a sabbatical abroad. I mean, you're still working, making money, but you don't have to work so hard in a lot of cases.
Wow, thank you so much. I love that insight. And then we're getting a couple other questions about this language topic. When you're applying for citizenship, do you need to take a test in their language? And if I could just quickly add, I'm getting my Czech citizenship from my grandpa, and that process, first of all, is very complicated. I don't have to do a language test. So I don't know if you could touch on that, Cepee, a little bit.
Yeah, so in my case, I didn't have to take a language test because I was applying as a Colombian citizen. And so it's assumed that I already knew Spanish. So I didn't have to take a language test. I did have to take like a cultural and history test that is in Spanish. It's, you know, written, not oral. And it was pretty easy. So that was 25 questions. So it's going to depend on the country. Some countries are going to have, like I said, higher language requirements. So I would assume that tests are going to be involved. If you're applying for citizenship, they're going to want to make sure that you've integrated into the country. And the way they can test that is through kind of a cultural history exam or a language exam. How hard it's going to be is really going to depend, but you can find out that information online, you know, in Facebook groups, ask around. I do want to say the one thing I wanted to go back to about language, though, is I want to encourage people to like be realistic about language learning. I hear a lot of people are like, yeah, I'm going to move to Spain and I plan to be fluent in the first year. And I'm like, whoa, okay. If you are like a language whiz, maybe that's going to happen. But I just want to, you know, really let people know kind of the truth about learning a language. It's a lot of work and it takes time. So don't get discouraged when you move abroad. It can take, you know, I've been here 8 years and I still don't feel like I'm fluent. I'm very good and I can speak Spanish, but I still don't feel like myself in Spanish. And I don't know if I ever will. So this is like a lifelong learning lesson. So just be realistic with your language learning also.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Cepee. And I wanted to actually introduce you to Anita, who is actually another language expert. I think it's a perfect little liaison that we have here, that we're talking about language. And yeah, I wanted you guys to meet and get a chance to introduce yourselves to each other. So maybe you guys could connect offline.
Amazing. Hi, Anita.
How are you?
Good, good. Pardon?
You can both hear me well and see me well. All good?
Yes.
Super. So excited to be here. And my gosh, like so interesting to listen to your conversation. It's like I agree with you in so many aspects. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, I'm excited to hear what you have to say about learning Portuguese. I'm going to stick around. But thank you so much, Shauna. And thank you, everyone. If you have any questions, again, find me and connect with me.
And Cepee, if you want to drop, guys, the free gift, Cepee, could you drop the ebook link just one more time in there? I want to make sure I sent everybody the right one. Thank you so much for being with us. I hope you guys join She Hit Refresh, reach out to Cepee, and see you soon, Cepee.